Hello and welcome to the Hammer Museum. My name is Jessica Howe and I'm the Director of Exhibitions here at the Hammer. We're very pleased to present to you this evening a program organized on the occasion of our exhibition Urban China, Informal Cities, currently on view in the lobby gallery. This exhibition explores the dynamic and innovative content of Urban China magazine, the only magazine published in China devoted to issues of urbanism. The magazine's global, cross-disciplinary network of correspondents and collaborators merge rigorous methods of data collection and analysis with witty graphic representations of their findings. The installation here at the Hammer presents in exhibition form some of the smart, quirky, beautiful, and humorous ideas generated by both contributors to the magazine and lay people adapting to life in cities across China. Solutions to the challenges of urban living, whether proposed by trained architects or ordinary citizens, are given space and credibility in the pages of the magazine and on the walls of the gallery. A massive wall graphic combines photographs, found images, numerical data, and maps into an overall presentation of the ideas that seem to be bursting out of the cities from Beijing to Guangzhou. A Flash-based user-navigable database of photographs and a selected collection of past issues of Urban China allow our visitors to explore these innovations and ideas at their own pace. And I should mention, by the way, that the lobby gallery will be open this evening until 10 p.m. If you've not seen the exhibition, you'll have the opportunity to do so following the program. This exhibition is presented as part of our 3-museum project. The 3M project, as it's known, was conceived and developed together with the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago and the New Museum in New York to jointly commission, exhibit, and acquire important works of contemporary art by artists whose work has not yet received significant recognition. The partnership, now in its second cycle, involves 4 new commissions by Jeremy Deller, Daria Martin, Matthias Poledna, and Urban China. The program this evening is co-presented with the MAK Center for Art and Architecture at the Schindler House and the Urban Future Initiatives. If you've not been to the Schindler House, I would recommend it. It's an incredible building, and the MAK Center has a rich program of exhibitions and lectures, which you probably would be interested in. I'd especially like to thank Kimberly Meyer, who's director of the MAK Center. She and our other colleagues at the MAK Center have been great partners on this and other programs presented here at the Hammer, and we hope there'll be many more opportunities to work together with them. Tonight we are welcoming to the Hammer stage Benjamin Godsill and Jiang Jun. Benjamin Godsill is curatorial associate at the New Museum of Contemporary Art in New York, where he develops exhibitions and programs. He's worked with a variety of artists, including Jeffrey Inaba, Agatha Snow, Daniel Guzman, and Stephen Shearer. Mr. Godsill has lectured at numerous universities, including Columbia University and the Steinhardt School at the New York University, where he is an adjunct faculty member. Jiang Jun is founder and editor-in-chief of Urban China magazine, which has been in existence since 2005. He has received his bachelor's degree from Chongqing University in Shanghai and his master's degree from Tsinghua University in Beijing, and now teaches at the Guangzhou Academy of Fine Arts. He is a designer and critic and has been working on urban research and experimental study, exploring the interrelationships between design phenomenons and urban dynamics. Please join me in welcoming Jiang Jun and Benjamin Godsill.
Good evening. I want to start off by thanking Jessica, not just for that amazing introduction, but also for all the help she's put into realizing the exhibition here at the Hammer, the exhibition at large, and of course this event this evening. And real quickly, I also want to thank Claudia Bastor, for the Director of Public Programs here at the Hammer Museum, for everything she's done to make sure that this evening happened. And of course, everyone at the MAK Center for Art and Architecture, particularly Kimberly Meyer, the director there. And I'd also want to thank our exhibition's funders, both at the New Museum here and eventually at the MCA in Chicago, Deutsche Bank, who's been a funder of the entire run, this entire run of the commission series. You're not really going to hear too much from me this evening. I'm going to let Jun do most of the talking because Urban China is really his brainchild and his vision, and to be able to see his images and hear about their practice is really a privilege. So I'm going to be here more as someone to intercede and ask questions and hopefully kind of further the dialogue along. Although there are a few things I just do want to start off with to sort of set the stage for what he's going to be talking about and showing to you this evening. And about how this exhibition kind of came about, because it's an interesting exhibition to a degree to have in an art museum, because Jun is not always an artist. He's many other things. I would say he's also an artist, but to try and bring a magazine into museum spaces, into spaces that are primarily used for the display of objects and performances and things that come very directly out of the field of visual culture, it's sort of interesting to try and bring not just a magazine, which is what Urban China is, but it's not just that. We all really were trying to capture its vitality as kind of a network. I mean, you have a bunch of people that all work together to create this magazine. And for me, Urban China, while it is these great documents that you can see down in the exhibition laid out on the tables, it's so much more than that. It's all the research and all the people and all the kind of friendships you make and collaborations that you engage in. These are all sort of elements of what Urban China is. And the exhibition, in turn, is an attempt to kind of create a physical manifestation, to create a way of seeing a little bit of how you think and a little bit of how these networks operate to make research. And I became really fascinated with Urban China as a discursive practice, because while it's hyper rigorous, I mean, the research that you do is very careful and very direct, and it really always digs down into the heart of any matter. The way you represent it, whether in public kind of presentations or in the magazine, is always super fun and super beautiful. And you manage to take these very serious, what could be dry topics, and give it kind of a life force that wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that's one of the reasons that your practice appealed to me so much, and I think why we decided to try and take something that we wouldn't normally find in the museum space, in the kind of musicological space, if you will, over here. And I want to thank you for bringing that to us. And just to talk about the background real quickly before we get into showing us some of the images, Urban China is a magazine of urbanism, but more importantly, it's kind of a magazine and a set of research practices, at least for me, that's about life. Sure, it's about buildings, and it's about how buildings fit in cities and how people interact with those buildings in those cities, but it's really also about how people kind of change the cities around them, how all of us act as kind of active agents, not just in what's been kind of prescribed to us, but in how we in turn inscribe the spaces of cities and hence our lives. And I think that's really vital, and I think the way that you study it is really vital in that you do take all this data, as I said, all this rigorous data, and manage to find just the right search terms to make it legible and to make it readable for us and to make it something that we can understand and possibly affect. And if power kind of now is currently constructed in our world, but basically who gets to set those search terms? We have all this massive data that's kind of constantly flowing over us. And if the people, the people that are endowed with power to set the terms to search that and to make the narratives out of that, if that's the world we're currently living in, I think you're presenting through your research practices, which you're about to share with us, a really vital and important way to create counter-narratives, a way to create other stories that might not be necessarily from the powerful, but perhaps more from the people. And kind of with that, I'm gonna turn it over to you, and I think you're gonna show us some images. And as I said, I'm gonna ask you lots of questions and interrupt you. So I hope you'll have a little patience with me. And at the end, we will ask for questions, and so save all your tidbits and take down notes and get ready to grill us at that point.
Yeah, can you help me to open all these images? Yeah.
You want to open them all?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for coming. I'm here talking about what is Urban China, and before I start to introduce you the exhibition, I would like to explain my original idea how to do exhibition in Hammer Museum. And originally, when Benjamin came to me about setting up an exhibition traveling in 3 cities in United States, my idea is that we can do something corresponding the local context with the idea, with the knowledge from China. So I've been to New York for many times, and I find the new museum is inside a context which is very informal, because the new museum is located in Chinatown in New York. And we have been doing the relevant topics just like informal space and Chinatown, Chinese family, and migrating China. They are all related to the topic of Chinatown. So the first exhibition in New York.
One second of patience.
Yeah. The first exhibition in New York, actually, we have a big collection from our previous issues of urban China, and we have made a network of all the relevant issues, which can define what is informal space, what is Chinatown come up to.
So this is a view, kind of a diagram of how we planned out the space at the first exhibition venue, which is at the New Museum in New York, which is a big kind of glass-fronted space in the lobby of the museum.
Yeah, basically it's a very big wallpaper with a big collection of all the items we collected from our previous issues. And many people ask that, what are you going to exhibit? How many items do you have? Actually, I do not have the idea how many items, because it's just meaningless to count the number of the items, but the number of the hierarchy of all these items. So we have several hierarchy of the wallpaper. One is the general topic, which is urban China, and then we split urban China into urban and China, and we give many explanations on urban, just like urban village or fast urbanization. And China, we can split it into Chinatown or made in China. So in this way, we again split it into three dimensions. One is the city, and then architecture, and then objects. And then we just embed all the issues onto this big map.
So this is the entire back wallpaper that the New Museum's across the back wall, and here at the Hammer, of course, it's down and it wraps around that square space. What you have here is kind of all these key terms when we talk about what urban China is, both in terms of the magazine and also just the study of how cities there operate, yeah?
So as what you can see from here, it's actually a wallpaper with many keywords in yellow characters. And then it's just like a mapping of all these keywords into a network, and you can trace the reasoning or deduction of the central keywords called urban China, and you have such a map.
So you kind of had many layers on this wallpaper, because you have the layer of words, but then also how the words interconnect with each other in the themes, yeah?
So in the New Museum, there are two layers in the space. One layer is the wallpaper on the wall, and another layer we call the wall glass, because there is a big glass in front of the wall. And we have made a network of keywords to explain the interrelationship between the different items of the wallpaper. So because of the time, the shortage of time, we make a very fast collection of all these items, and also shortage of a budget. We just selected a very few collection of real objects, something like bicycles and clothes. They all have a shadow on this wallpaper, as you can see here, and the exhibition in the Hammer Museum. So I would like to give a general introduction of the magazine Urban China, and basically it is a magazine on what is going on in China, and what is going on in urbanization, and how we define urbanization as a spatial form of a modernization. And we think this is a very important moment of China. That the country is shifting itself from the pre-modern era to a modern era, with the biggest amount of a population moving forward. And in the past 100 years, we have been experimenting many ways in this modernization. And now it seems that the great leap forward has been carried out in the right way. However, there are still many problems inside it. And the so-called opening and reform process is actually carried out in many different segments and sections inside the political system, such as the education system, hospital system, and the sports system, including the administrative level and finally the superstructure level. So Urban China set up the agenda on the reform of China and set up all the different topics in different sections, one by one, in different issues. And we set up the specific topic according to a timeline. For example, during the Olympic Games, we set up a topic like collective movement, simply because sports in China is the same with movement in the character. And so after several years, we have a bigger framework with many small topics which have been elaborated monthly by monthly, and then we have a bigger agenda that we can define what is the modernization of China. So here I would like to show you a diagram we made for the Castle documentary several years ago. And at that time, there was an exhibition for magazines globally, and we are supposed to give a definition of what is urban China. So we set up nonlinear or multilinear definition for urban China. You can see here there is a sentence, a big tree of the sentence. You can read it from different directions. And so we can start it from the logo, which is like a copyright, the logo of a copyright. We selected logo not only because we are China, but also because we are talking about the copyright of China. And the copyright of China is actually for many years in a big absence. And China is also very famous for its pirate copying industry. But we believe that China is also inventing a new model of modernization globally. For the developed countries, we are exporting our culture, but for the developing country, we are exporting our political model, which is called Chinese characteristic. So we are supposed to introduce to the world what is a Chinese characteristic, what is Chinese value. We call this value copyright. And then we are doing a magazine instead of a newspaper or instead of a book, because a newspaper is just too fast that we do not have enough time to talk about the further thorough issues inside Chinese urbanization. But a book is also too slow that we cannot catch up with the speed of Chinese urbanization. So magazine is actually perfect for its monthly frequency. And the magazine is also a good network that we have the good reason to invite all the contributors globally to involve to discuss on this platform of the magazine. And then our agenda is set up on the experiments of modernization. So we actually start up from the experiment of the SEZ, which is special economic zone. But finally, it is not anymore economic. It is also administrative. It is also political. So it's finally about political reform or systematic reformation.
Could you explain just real quickly a little bit more about what the SEZ zones are exactly, like what that means and how it exists in the real world?
SEZ zone is actually what we call the petri dish of the Communist Party's experiments. Reform from the plain economy to the market economy. And it is after the SEZ that we have the so-called Chinese characteristic. So SEZ is actually 5 cities set up in the first year of 1980s. And 4 of the cities is actually a little bit successful. The most successful city is Shenzhen, but there is a failure, which is Hainan. It's totally, the whole province is actually abandoned after several years, and I'm going to show you the failed SEZ. And then into the 1990s, the experience of SEZ has been promoted to nationwide, to other cities. And then we have stepped into another era of the reform, of economic reform. And into the 20th century, or 21st century, the SEZ has been, the whole China has been turned into SEZ. And then it is meaningless to talk about SEZ as this era. So we are talking about SAZ, which is Special Administrative Z. And that is now what Shenzhen is doing to reform itself to another level of administrative reform. That is SEZ. And if we talk about the narration or narrative strategy of urban China, actually we are very academic in the content. However, we are very popular in the narrative. So the hardcore of the magazine is very heavy. We invite all the professors and the experts from all the disciplines come up together into a reactor of the knowledge of modernization, like a crossfire, and we are weaving a network of knowledge for all these contributors. However, we want to broadcast all this knowledge to as many people as possible. So we call this strategy soft land. We provide the interrelationship, which is very as easy to be understood as possible. And we also provide to the contributors as many accessible and understandable material as possible. So actually, as editors, we are also a think tank. In the first phase, we provide the network to pack up all the different discipline contributors. And at the final stage, also provide all the very visual materials for the contributors so that they can be understood. And finally, our ambition is to reinforce a kind of collective intelligence. This collective intelligence is actually what we want to inherit from our tradition, because China is actually such a collective country, and we have a long history of collective mind or collective intelligence in which the local society has this kind of power to be collectivied to question the central collective power. So that there used to be such a balance, but in the recent century, this balance has been broken because this collectiveness has been replaced by the national collectiveness, which is very centralized. And we can hear very little voices from the people, from the intelligent people or smart people. So now, at this moment, when people become richer and richer, we want them also become smarter and smarter. So we want to reinvent this kind of tradition. Yeah, this is the logo of Urban China, which is a Chinese copyright. And this is the 3 dimensions we discuss all our topics. It is city, architecture, and products. However, they are all transformed or distorted by the environment or the context. So it is 10th city, which is a city totally defined by its density instead of density. And especially at this moment, we have a very strong sense of history because there are huge mutations every day, and it's just taken place in a very daily level and every Chinese people is just living inside, so that he has this unconscious sense of history, and he has to involve himself into this kind of history.
So do you mean the kind of constant redevelopment? I mean, the kind of breaking down of the old pieces of the city and the creation of new pieces? Is this where this tension, this kind of time-based feeling comes from?
You can say so, but that is just one simplified definition of tense. There are many tense. A new city or bad city, new history, or the future and the past. There are very simplified definition about Chinese tense. There are even more tense like construction or construction but not realized, or it's just idled or stranded. It's just abandoned or something like that. There are many, many tense, many layers, so that you are actually living inside simultaneously development in all different kind of tense. So that is a tense city. And dirty texture, this is an invented word to describe an architecture, has been distorted by the environment or by the context. So that the architect of the work of the architecture cannot control the final result. It is totally beyond the control of the architect. And the social product is also the product that has been totally distorted by the society around it. Yeah, this is a central image of the wallpaper and the tent city. You can see we have this big logo borrowed from the urban planning center of Shanghai. It's a golden image. This one, it's a golden image of the Shanghai's future and past, which Shanghai, the city, has been very proud of. However, behind that glorious image is a massive demolition scene. In front of the city, which has been totally ignored because of its erasure on history and its negative. So tent city is actually, as you just said, is basically about different tents simultaneously that take place together. And in the tent city, we just talk about SEZ. So I pick up the four cities, the four SEZ in the coastline of China. There are Shenzhen and Zhuhai and Xiamen and Shantou. They all have different destinations, different fates. But Shenzhen, because of its its neighborhood to Hong Kong, it is the most successful. And the dirty texture is actually the architecture totally distorted by its environment. So basically, you put architecture into dirt, you get a dirty texture. So here I have a case study on a very special topology of a house here. Originally, this house is actually a house, a boat. The boat, there are very little rooms on the boat, and the people who live on this boat is a fisher. But into the recent century, all these residents cannot fish anymore because of the pollution in the river and the sea. So they have to go back to the city to find more opportunities. However, they cannot buy land from the bank, the river bank, because the price is too high, and the people who live on the riverbank refuse them to get landed. So they have to build more and more houses on the boat itself. They become a boat house, and they have to pack up together into a village. So it becomes a water or river village. And finally, because all these houses are made of wood, so it's very easy for all these houses get burned or get fired. So after several tragedies, they decided to cover all the houses with the how to say, ironclad?
Ironclad or metal clad, yeah.
Yeah, they mapped them with iron skin. But it is still useless because the fire just got fired from inside out. So the government decided to give all these villagers a piece of land on the riverbank only for the kitchens. So it is basically takes the fire from the house to the riverbank and build all these kitchens, and they're all built in bricks. So here you have a very interesting topology. On the riverbank, you have all these brick houses, and on the river you have all these wooden boats, and they are all cladded with iron skin. And in between the two rooms, the two houses, there is a bridge, a wooden bridge. And on the riverbank, it is fixed, and on the river, it is, how to say, flexible.
Unstable.
Unstable, yeah. So I call this amphi house. It actually have a double function in the different topology. So this is what we call the subliminal inventions of Chinese local people. All this topology is actually generated by the basic instinct because of the difficulties of the real life. And here you can see what is social products. And we have installed two very cheap items in the new museum. Here you find all these bib cups actually locked up by the tins.
So the water, kind of the water faucets, they actually have locks that people have designed onto them?
Yeah, it's actually privatized. And I show you why it privatized later in another story. Here I would like to show you first the code. It is called a labor insurance wear code. It's a very long name, but it is actually what I wear in my childhood days. I was brought up in a factory, and in 1970s, all the factories actually organized or managed in the military system. It is called a unit, and a unit is actually a small courtyard, how to say, a small walled community, and you have to live inside, and you can enjoy all the community facilities. You are brought up in the kindergarten, in the community, the primary school, the secondary school, and you have the dining room. You have also the bathroom, the public bathroom. Everything actually is small, miniature society. However, the unit, especially factory, has a very, very limited, how to say,
resources?
Resources, because of the plain economy. The factory actually give you a lot of labor insurance products, including the veils, the sleeves, and something like this to protect you from the pollution or from all the latent risks you could meet up with in your labor work. However, you have very little daily uses such as clothes or underwears. So our our parents use their intelligence to transform all these labor insurance products into the daily use product like this. So this is what I wear in my childhood as underwear. It is made of the veils you put on your face when you work.
The face masks, yeah?
So in a special issue called a review on the recent history, Urban Review, we put up all these disappeared products or disappeared items from the recent history. We do not have enough time to document all these products, all these objects into the history, because this is just in the recent 30 years. And historians do not have enough time to document this. So we can call this is a contemporary archaeology. And inside this system of objects, you can find clothes, you can find the vehicles, you can find also what you work in the street, what you use in the bedroom.
Are these objects you're nostalgic for? Mm-hmm. Are these objects you're nostalgic for?
Yeah.
That you don't have anymore, and do you feel like an emotional connection to them, or no?
Emotional connection we have.
Yeah.
But many people just forget about it until we show them. Yeah, it's kind of a very subtle nostalgia for many Chinese people because of the collective memory. Every Chinese has experienced this kind of collective time, but it just changed very fast that most of them have forget about it. So when we put it into a system of object, we find this is actually a social system, and this is not only the fetishism that you enjoy in the shopping mall. It is actually a systematic fetishism that enjoy in your collective memory. So inside all these social products, we have to introduce the background of one of the most important product, which is called Made in China. And the recent global economic crisis has shown us the importance of Made in China and the risk of Made in China. This diagram shows that only in the PRD, how much product we made for the world, and why it is the PRD is called the World Factory, and how many migrant workers has moved into the PRD for all these chip level as chip level, and recently. You can see here there are 3 million migrant workers moved in the PRD, but recently all these migrants, most of them have moved back to the hometown because they're laid off because of the shortage of the how to say the order from the international world, especially from the United States. And recently, we found a lot of global products made in China in our shopping malls, and they are sold in a very nice deduction, very nice account. And here, I would like to show you one of the one case study from the Made in China products. This is a village in the YRD, which is Yangtze River Delta. And you can see from the roadside a big pile of shells. And all these shells are actually recycled from another village, which take their pearl from the shell. Yeah,
they take the pearls, cultivated pearls.
And then they dumped all these shells until another village recycled them. So there is a very interesting industrial chain in between the system of villages. So this village make a big fortune because of the recycling. They make buttons from the shell and sell the buttons to the global world. And finally, in 2003, the buttons made actually reach up to the number of 60 billion buttons. So every people in the global world has 10 buttons in average. So that is a big number. So if you find a button made of shell on your coat, it's maybe made in this unknown village.
So you have this kind of symbiosis between, each village, or in this case, these two villages have very specific specialties, but there's kind of a symbiosis between the two.
Yeah.
Is it systemized, or is it more casual? Does it happen kind of in a more vernacular way?
Actually, originally in the PRD, a lot of villages, they're actually competing with each other. So if they find making buttons is more fortunate, they will all making buttons, and then finally they lose profit together. So finally the government come up, because China is very centralized with the government. So government said, you make this, you make that. So there is a general planning on the pattern of the product. So finally we call this policy 一村一品, which means one village, one product. So there is a differentiation between every village. And finally, you have a pattern of different products. And we used to have a map to show the different villages or towns with different products. And every village or town is entitled with products, such as the towns of ties, the village of buttons, as you can see.
And these are actually their kind of legal names, or is it more kind of just
legal, very legal, official name. Yeah.
So you live, if you make ties for a living, you live in the village of ties.
Yeah. Actually, it's a kind of nickname. So it's a nickname given by the government, also given by the village themselves.
And it's almost like Fordism, but on a larger scale. Like each piece kind of has a very, meaning each village has like this very specific, but very micro and very small kind of task in a larger organism.
Yeah, sometimes so small, sometimes just like how to say this? The
Shoelace?
Shoelace, yeah, shoelace. The village of shoelace. So only, for example, you make a shoe, you make shoes. So there is a village of shoelace, and a village of this. What's that?
A soul.
Of soles.
Yeah.
A village of skin, and a village of pigs. The pigs, they are how to say? They take skin from the pigs and sell it to the village of the lizard, something like that.
And kind of never the twain should meet. Are they geographically usually? Is there a proximity between these? You know, would the city of the soul be very close to the city of the skin?
Yeah.
Geographically,
they are very close to each other.
Okay.
Yeah, there is actually informal geographical politics, yeah, industrial chain in between all these villages. Yeah. Of course, they are actually informally generated, but finally they are actually determined by the policies.
Kind of codified after the fact. Yeah.
So this is a village making shoes, and they are taking the shoelace from another village or something from another village and making shoes together. And we have made a documentary on this to show how the migrant worker from Hunan province, which is in the middle of China, come up to the coastline, to the city called Wenzhou, and make shoes by hand. So they are all handicrafts, and we have make a picture of their hand literally. You can see the skid-proof for these two fingers, and how to say it?
Like for the pin, like almost like a homemade thimble to protect from the prick. Yeah.
Use this finger to push the needle into the skin. And here you have to put another laser to prevent your finger scratching from the laser. So there's a geography on hand, and actually every manufacturer actually has the same hand like this. But we also show we want to show the shoes he's making and the shoes he's wearing. The shoes he's making is about 248 RMB, which is very expensive for them. And the shoes he's wearing is very cheap. It's just 3 RMB, 3 kwai. So here we can find a product in between, which is very much like a leather shoes, a very expensive leather shoes, but actually very, very cheap. It is about 5 RMB. It looks like a leather shoes, but actually it's totally plastic. So in this part, we want to show what is a social product. A social product is actually because of social movement, such as migrant workers moving from the countryside, where they have a very low hierarchy into the city, where they have to show their dignity by some items, by some fetishism. However, they cannot afford very expensive goods, so there is a product like this. It is affordable, but it looks very, very luxury.
So it's kind of modeled on the shoes they're making. Like it has the kind of at the base level the same design, the same shape, and even some of the same texture, but made out of plastic or rubber.
Yes, total plastic. So we call this is a Hongkongese shoes, which means that you will get a feet disease, a very
stinky feet.
Stinky feet. Okay, yeah, because it cannot breathe. Yeah. So basically, Urban China is a platform based on a database called Hi China, and this database you can see from the exhibition.
It's down on the computer screen.
On computers, yeah. It's actually a database based on over 500,000 images, but here we only have a collection of 2,000 because the shortage of the memory. And for many years we have documented the different cities in China, and by far I have been to over 200 cities in China, and every city I have to document a city in a very generic directory so that I can literally mapped every category one by one to another cities. So as you can see from this map, every point is a keyword, and from this keyword, actually, you can go through all the different 200 cities, and it is totally linked by the same keywords.
Yeah, if I could just explicate real quickly. So on the database, when you interact with it, you click on one of these words, and he'll have keyworded every image that has something to do with, say, cinema. So from all the cities around China,
Yeah.
you take a picture of the cinema, and it'll be under that keyword, and so forth, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I like in this network is that we can find both generic city and specificity, and you can find every city almost have the same theme because China is always in a relatively centralized system from the feudalism time to the communism time. But because China is too big and the history is too long, the one specific item sometimes go very differently in different directions, so that you can find specificity in different cities. And in this way, we can make different projects from this bigger project. So we call the network project or projects, where we can set up our agenda for urban China. So we have a lot of projects in urban China, and this strategy we call is project oriented. So every project actually can be literally explained as what China. So for example, this one is called Urban Image and Text China. And as you can see from the wallpaper in the exhibition, we have very casual layout of all these hidden text taken from the urban space, city space of Chinese cities.
Like little pieces of graffiti that you find on the walls, yeah?
Yeah. So we used to make a special issue on all these graffitis. For example, this is a graffiti. This is a graffiti we taken from the park. It is about how to kill people. The guy is assassinated, so he wrote down his name, wrote down his telephone number to be commissioned to assassinate someone. However, what I am interested in is not how dramatic the urban image and text is, but the dialogue between the formal text and the informal text. So I also introduced one image from another city in Hubei province, in which the policeman has put a big slogan on the top of the street, say that you can kill people and you get awarded if that guy is robbing you, something like that. So it is actually a big slogan put by the policeman. So there is a dialogue between the policeman and the murderer. And this is a dialogue between the demolishers and the demolished. All these slogans are actually put by the developer and the local government. They said, we have to implement the demolition very fair and public and very fair. Yeah. However, here you can see, please return my bloody money, and I'm very tragic. And here you can see I'm a sacrifice of the demolition, something like that. So there is always this kind of dialogue in a specific space. So we just basically put up all this dialogue together. Yeah, here is slogan taken from the construction site. And by the way, this construction site is a CCTV construction site, actually. Yeah. And here is, please return my bloody money, because all these migrant workers doesn't got paid from their developer.
So I mean, it's kind of a constant dialogue or discussion that's happening. I mean, it's almost, when I first saw it, because it's also people advertising, kind of looking for mistresses and kind of everything else, always in dialogue with the formalism. It's almost like kind of like a Craigslist, but on the walls of the city, kind of written on the walls, kind of almost like a bartering or trade. Any service that you could possibly imagine is kind of written up there on the wall.
Yeah. But basically, it's a kind of hyper real strategy because we just literally put the different things together to make this dialogue. I think they are in the same urban space, but not so close, and they are not so face to face. But actually, in this issue, you can see they're face to face. Yeah. So here you can also see the different narratives from the different figures of Chinese. Here's a migrant worker who is living inside the construction site because there are seasonal birds, and every year, only in the Spring Festival, they have the time to go back to the hometown to meet their wife. So they are very hungry for pornography. So they're making pornographic drawing on the construction site on the wall like this, and it is beautifully made everywhere. And sometimes you can find a very romantic poems on the wall. However, when all these buildings are constructed, they're all covered up. Yeah, it become kind of relic inside. You have to be archaeologists to discover them. Yeah, one of my clients, when he asked me to do the renovation of his house, I asked him to keep one of these pieces, yeah, as a collection.
Did he go for it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. We use a friend to frame all this poem. And here is a beggar. The beggar is writing a very long poem on the street to describe how sad and how tragic he is. So that is urban China. Yeah, we just did a very, very, very brief introduction of urban China. But finally, we have to go up to the real philosophy of urban China and the tension. Why we describe urban China is actually a magazine about the tension, about the tensity. The tense is actually in between the content and the context. It's in between the pre-modernity and the modernity, between the real and the surreal, and between the formal and informal. So for many years, actually, we in every issue, we actually make this balance or keep this tension between all these different extremes. So my idea in Los Angeles is different from my idea in New York. In New York, I found the exhibition is taking place in Chinatown, so we set up the exhibition as informal space. However, because of the shortage of time, we do not have enough time to do another new exhibition, so it is literally moved to Los Angeles. That is not my original idea. However, I would like to, my original idea is actually link urban China with Los Angeles, especially the how to say, when I come here 2 days ago, I actually have a kind of illusion that every people I meet here is a celebrity from Hollywood. So I find actually I have this kind of a skepticism about my fear on the reality. So I want to set up urban China, the link between urban China and Los Angeles on real. So yesterday I didn't sleep, although I have a very strong jet lag. I wrote an article about on real. So it has 10 sections about different meanings of real. The firstly, realistic and unrealistic. So what is unrealistic? Unrealistic is actually is different from unreal, and I mean it's different from ideal. It can be carried out, it can be built. It is not a dream, but it is doomed to failure and is doomed to a kind of disaster, so that it is judged as unrealistic later. Here you can see a painting of China several years ago, several decades ago. It is in Mao's time in 1950s. At that time, Mao had a utopian vision on the future China, in which he wanted to set up a lot of factories in the hinterland of China. There's one day, Chairman Mao climbed up to the top of the Tiananmen Tower, And he said, I want to see a lot of chimneys here from the Tiananmen Square. But this vision never happened because of the threat from the United States at that time. It is still Cold War time. And also later on, it is threat from also Soviet Union. So China become in between the two superpowers. It's like sandwich. Two superpowers, Soviet Union and the United States, and China is in between. So finally, China set up a big hinterland to protect itself. So in hinterland, what is hinterland? Hinterland is actually a big walled country. Originally, the walled country is walled by the Great Wall in the desert, between the desert and the agricultural civilization. But because of this kind of threat of the Cold War, China shrank itself to the hinterland of China, which is actually walled by the mountains and the three gorges and all these highlands. And then you can find inside the mountains, Chairman Mao set up a lot of third front cities and a lot of industrial cities. Industry is actually the first step for a country to be modernized. Industry is actually where the country got all his resources and all his energy to fasten itself, to catch up with all his Western rivals. So at that time, Chairman Mao set up a very unrealistic ambition or destination to catch up with Britain in 3 years and catch up with the United States in 5 years. So that is the utopian plan at that time. In order to realize this dream, he mobilized all the villagers and workers worldwide, nationwide, to make steel. So this movement is called Tiny Furnace Movement. Every villager has to make up a small furnace like this on the farmland, on the agricultural land. And they have to take up all the steel, steelware, ironware?
Ore. The iron ore?
All the iron things from their house, from their home. And put it into a furnace and make something very, very bad steel. Yeah.
So each family has to kind of give up all their metal goods that they use from their house.
Yeah. So to make it back to the iron. So it is after several years, this kind of utopian movement turned into a big disaster. Many people died, as you know. So it is also a case to show how an unrealistic project can bring a disaster, bring a very tragic after effect to the reality. Secondly, I would like to explain what is reality and ideality. So this is a poster to show the ideality of People's Commune. It's also in Mao's time. At that time, People's Commune is thought to be the first modern style or modern lifestyle of Chinese communities. So this poster is showing a commune member is installing lighting in the public space of the commune. And at that time, we said, you have the lighting, you have the telephone, you have the bath tube, you are very, very modern. So here I would like to show a case in Beijing city. At that time, People's Commune are mostly in the countryside, and Chairman Mao want to set up the biggest countryside, most modern countryside in the world at the time. So that is how People's Commune is coming up. And later on, the city, even the city, is going to learn from the countryside. So since People's Commune is the invention in the countryside, the city soon learned this experience from countryside. So there is an urban People's Commune. In the countryside, People's Communes are always in a small house called bungalow, a bungalow house. But in the city, because of the shortage of land, it becomes even more urban, or even more like a skyscraper. Here you have a house, you have a building with 14 stories. It is in the old city area in Beijing. Originally, it is called Urban People's Commune. It is also called Communist Mansion. And originally, it is totally provided to those workers, very good workers, and so-called labor models of the socialism workers. And at that time, it is very modern because it has an elevator, even has an elevator, has a telephone in every different unit, and it has a bath tube, which is very luxury. But it didn't have a kitchen, because at that time, a kitchen is totally a political mistake. In the communism time, you cannot eat by yourself. You cannot eat privately. You have to eat together, and you have to eat collectively in the public dining room. So the public dining room is actually located in the basement of this skyscraper. And into the 1980s, because the reform and opening, because the planning economy has been totally switched to the market economy, and because the public space or the public policies has been switched into the private policies, all these houses has been privatized, even the public dining room has been abandoned and renovated into a hotel. So after that, all the residents had no place to cook. So they have to make the informal kitchens by themselves in a very, very wide collective corridor. So at least the corridor is wide enough for them to make all these kitchens. Many residents make the kitchens in a very simple way. They just move their stoves into all this kitchen, all these furnitures like this. So this is actually a fire again inside the wood. It's very dangerous, very risky. So recently, the Beijing city government announced that they are very, very risky buildings because they are very easily to get fired. But this is a very interesting topology to show how the reality has take place of the ideality. The ideality used to be it used to be the ideality in 1950s. However, it became very, very realistic in the reality of the 1980s. Here you can see what I showed you just now, the pipcock. The pipcock locked by different locks. It is in the same building that the residents have to privatize all their hoses, to prevent other neighborhood use their water. And all the water, originally, they are all free, and they're all commonwealths in the planning economy time, but now they're all privatized. So this is also a very typical social product. And if you take a look at the water house, you can find all the locks to the pipcocks are totally different, which is a very nice landscape.
So you can't go and buy one of those locks. Kind of each family has to figure out how to make them for themselves. That's why they're all different.
Lock. Each house has a key to the lock. Yeah. And then we have the real and the fictional. The fictional is actually what I can see in Hollywood. We have seen so many movies from Hollywood, and they're all fictional, but many Chinese people think they're real. And here, I would like to blur the borderline between real and fictional. Here, I collaborated with a friend of mine who writes in a very realism way in his novel. And he used to be a journalist in the most famous newspaper in China. And he has so many materials from the news, so many collections from the newspaper. And his writing is actually basically transform all this news into kind of fictional things. And the collaboration between he and me is actually, I make the building, I design architecture, which is totally ugly and vulgar, and totally has no intelligence. It is like this, a very, very generic Chinese-style shopping mall. And his novel is called Shopping Utopia, and my building is also called Shopping Utopia. And I designed this building only to locate or designate all the special sites for all the different events, all the different stories of all the different figures. So there are altogether 15 figures inside this story. Everybody has a different story. Everybody has a different linear exploration of the shopping mall in one day, one very, very typical day. And they are all crossing over together, and they are crossfired. There are some specific event happening together, and all event actually you can trace back to the newspaper. So this is actually a blur between the real and the fictional, and also blur between the architecture world and also the fictional literature world. The reality and the hyper-reality. So in the exhibition, you can see there's a story called Electronic Gold Rush. And this is actually the real story I document from a local village. The village also entitled by a special product. It's called Electronic Rush, Electronic Rubbish Village. However, I would like to link this story to some other stories that can describe what is the global economy. In this story, I actually start with a American island called Saipan. And Saipan is very famous because in the Second World War, it used to be the island transport nuclear bomb to Japan. But now it is not transport nuclear bomb anymore. It is transport the rubbish from United States to China. So I find it very interesting. So on this island, I find a Chinese who is cheated to the island. Somebody said you can get very high education on island. You have to pay me a little bit of money, but you can be a university student. So this guy come to the island and found no universities there. So he has no money to go back to China. So he has to work in the rubbish, collecting rubbish. And he told me all this rubbish, many of the rubbish actually come up from the mainland of the United States. So this is the first story. The second story is that I come up to Guangzhou and I find a very weird ghost market. It is called ghost market because it is only opened in the night in the morning during 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the very dark time. And most places in the market are very dark. They are using the hand light to check all the products, all the commodities, and use the hand light to count money. So it's a very secret market. However, the market has an office. It has an office, a very official office. So it's actually a very black market under very official supervision. And I check out all these products. All these commodities sold in this market are actually illegal. They are transported from another city called Shantou, which is also SEZ. So we go to Shantou. So in Shantou, we found this village entitled with gold rubbish. It is a village that totally packed up by rubbish computers and half-used computers. The computers actually transported from the very close by port and in containers.
From the United States originally, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe from you, man. And their job, their work is actually basically taking all the electronic unit from the main board. And there are many family workshops like this. And they're taking the unit from the main board and also melting the very expensive metal from the main board also. It's very expensive. Sometimes they take the color, the color also from the main board. So this industry is very polluting. 3 days before I went to this village, there was a kid killed by the smoke, the very toxic smoke from this manufacturer. However, all these stories doesn't have a very necessary link. I just put them together into a overall story. So this is just like hyperreal because it is a fiction based on real stories. It is fiction based on three real stories that I linked them by myself. I call it hyperreal only because in the real life, we find real life very boring because all the dramatic moment is so dispersed in different corners that you cannot concentrate on them at once. But in a Hollywood movie, it's so dramatic that they put all the dramatic scenes together so that you can be very, very amused and entertained. And real and fake. So fake is actually a kind of strategy introducing the value of a brand by stealing the intelligence of the brand. And fake can be a product. It also can be a city or can be an architecture. Here I document 4 examples of the fake architectures or fake cities. Here is Spain in Harbin. Here is, I don't know, maybe Austria in Shenzhen. And here is Amsterdam in Shenyang. Here is Germany, the big German castle in Dalian. So they are all different Chinese cities, but you can find different pieces of European style cities. But here, what you find in the theme park called World Window is very exciting and fantastic. It is the first most successful theme park in China before Disney come to China. And they are all made in the miniature scale. For example, the Eiffel Tower is made in one third of the original scale. But the Triumph Gate is made 1/2 scale. So there are all different kind of scale world themes come up together into a spectacle of the world theme park. So people can have this surreal feeling how all this reality come up into a hyper reality. So fake can also be a product. Here you can see the Nike product we collected for the exhibition. Here you can find, here there's a bicycle. On the bicycle you can find all these Gucci, Prada bags selling in a very, very cheap price, like 80 RMB, 80 RMB, which is about $10 Prada. And here is 5 RMB CK. And you can find all these variations of Nike. It is called passive good because it is not Nike at all. It doesn't claim it's Nike. It's just very similar to Nike. So this is a KNIE and this is a NKIE. So there is a little bit difference. Because I cannot zoom up, but I think you can see from this image, this guy is totally not NBA. It's a NFA or NSA. It's soccer, yeah. They're playing the football. But finally, you can see the Nike, all these fake Nike, passive Nikes wear by the countryside peasant kids. Here there's a text. As I just said, we provide all the materials, evidence for our contributors. So this contributor is talking about passive goods. So we just provide them with all these passive brands we find in China. Here is a Starbucks, United States brand, but here is a Shanghai Starbucks, which has been recently abandoned because the Starbucks put a lawsuit to the Shanghai Starbucks. And here you can find the ports. You find Paris, but the Chinese combine them into parts. Crocodile into a double-headed crocodile. Yeah.
Just so much better.
Yeah. You can, you can also find the 40s art. The 40s art is actually the art not made by artists. It's made by migrant workers. So there is urban village in Shenzhen. Urban village is really surrounded by the city. It is totally swallowed by the city, but it is indigestible, so it is still there. Physically, it is still a village. So in this village, there are a lot of migrant workers who are educated to paint the very famous oil paintings from the very famous artists. And for example, if you are painting Van Gogh, you are painting the sunflower. One migrant worker paint the flower, another migrant worker paint the leaves. So finally, it becomes a painting. This is called the 14th art. So this is actually a faking industry in China. But the faking industry, can you say it has no intelligence? Still, you can find inventions inside. At least they can transform an urban village into such a big fortune-making village. And this village actually make a lot of money. They make about 200 million a year, RMB a year. So it's actually a very rich village. One of my friends from Tibet, he's painting Tanka in the village also. Reality and virtual reality. In this case, I want to show you an image which is made 4 years ago. And the company making this village is a very famous company. It is called Crystal CG. I think it is called Crystal because there is a crystal ball, and a witch can have a preview of the future through the ball. So they're calling it Crystal CG, a computer graphic. So 4 years ago, when Chinese cannot imagine what is the future in the coming 5 years, Crystal CG used the Hollywood techniques, all these animations to show what is to be like in Beijing Olympic and Shanghai Expo like this. So that is what we call the Photoshop reality. But recently, it has moved itself to the movie industry and the gaming industry because they find the architecture industry is not sustainable. Real and almost realized. Almost realized is not unrealistic. It is not ideal. It is just, it is not realized because of defeat from the reality, especially from a very sudden change in the economy or outburst of the bubble economy or sudden emergency taking place to the developer or very unsustainable policy making. So all these different reasons can make a unrealized project. Just now, I have explained what is SEZ, Special Economic Zone. However, many people from world to Chinese and Chinese themselves only know there is SEZ called Shenzhen, but many of them doesn't know or didn't remember Hainan Island, which is also used to be the most biggest SEZ in China. It is by the end of the 1980s that central government decided to make Hainan Island into an independent province and the biggest SEZ in China. And after several years, many people just come up to Hainan Island for a very, very bright future because every people believe that island will be very, very prosperous. But after several years of bubble economy, all this hope just disappeared. And there are altogether 20 million square meters buildings totally abandoned. And within all these buildings, you can find different programs. Like this is a 5-star hotel, and this is a resort. And this is all the apartments. Here's another apartment, and you can find here's a roof. The basement of the coming building has been changed into a swimming pool and swimmed by the kids, the children of the migrant workers, still left here. And this is a Bank of China. So actually, the central bank of China actually ceased loaning money into the island. So all the project just ceased suddenly, stopped suddenly. The whole island is totally frozen. Yeah, these are villas. again, villas. There's no road to villas. It's totally renaturalized. Yeah, it's totally surrounded by nature again. And finally, real and surreal. Here, I'd like to show you some of my designs. Yeah. Surreal means that if the term is borrowed from psychoanalysis. That means that you find reality too dramatic, or too absurd, too ridiculous, that you cannot believe it is real. The surreal has a quality that the people living inside, or the people who create the object or create the space, actually take it for real or take it for granted. However, for visitor or for outcomer, he found it totally surreal because he found a tension inside. So here, I would like to show, this is what I call vigrate. The vigrate is actually a kind of subliminal imagination of sex. But it is not Viagra. Viagra is very direct linked to sex. But here is a Viagra-shaped chocolate. So it is called Vigrate. It is actually a gift in Valentine's Day for you to give to your boyfriend and girlfriend. It has the ability to give you a good imagination. And here is another subliminal invention, and because in China there are many people using stools, and the stool is introduced to China in 1930s in Shanghai. At that time, many colonial houses has installed stools, and the stool was thought as a equipment, a facility of modernism. However, after many years, when the public space of China become worse and worse, and the hygienity become very problematic, many people use stools in this way. They sit or squat on the stool because it is totally not clean. So finally, I found a stool in China should be transformed like this. You should have two wings for you to sit on it. Yeah. I would also like to show another surreal object, which is borrowed from the Afterlife. All the design on these objects is actually a representation of what you want in this life. So it is actually a tribute from the living to the dead. And from this paper house, you can find there is a security guard, and there is a car, and there is a wife. Yeah.
So remind me again, these are objects that you would kind of, do you burn them? Is that why they're paper?
Yeah,
so you would burn them so that your ancestors will have them in the afterlife, will have these objects with them?
When you burn them, it just go with the wind into the heaven. Yeah. So actually, all the best wishes is materialized by dematerialization. You have to burn it into ashes. So this is what we call real life and afterlife. And finally, I would like to show another case from the Three Gorges. And this is also a very nice case to show how people make these astonishing inventions totally subliminally. Originally, Three Gorges, or the Yangtze River, is actually a river. So because of the Three Gorges Dam, as you know, the whole river has been transformed into a lake. A river is dynamic, and a lake is still. This is a sheer difference. So the whole ecology, natural ecology, has been changed. However, because of this natural change, the urban ecology also has been changed. Because the water level has to be heightened. All the people living adjacent to the riverbank has to move to a higher level to walk away from the coming flood. So the government has to make new cities everywhere, including the Sichuan province, Hubei province, also other provinces to contain all these new immigrants. So this is a case to show a little village where the government make all these new houses, as you can see here, all these white houses for them, for all the migrant villagers to move in. However, all the migrants originally live in old houses. They do not want to abandon the old materials, so they just dismantle the old house into particles, like doors, like windows, window frames, and tires, all these particles. And they just brought all the tires, all the particles, along with the bicycles, motorcycles, furnitures, up to the new height, and they rebuilt the old houses on the new houses. So if you are looking from the top of the mountain to this new city, it is totally like an old city. So I call it a ghost image, or ghost on the roof. Ramkuha's OMA just won the competition of CCTV. It's not 5 years ago. It's about 7 years ago. Yeah, very long time ago. At that time, you can see it is very similar to nowadays. Nowadays, we can find CCTV and TVCCs like this, but finally, it is recently burned. For me, an architect like Ram is like an architect journalist. He uses architecture as a probe into the system he wants to study. So CCTV is actually a very good interface to study the communism of China. And he even want to make a book on communism, and he even set up a special think tank on it. So all these studies is actually supposed to give support to the physical space. And all these studies is actually want to translate the theories and the surrealities into the space and the realities. However, the reality is always dramatic, more dramatic than you can imagine. And this is this year in the Lantern Festival of China, when the directors of the CCTV construction company want to celebrate the completion of the project. They lit up all the fireworks around the building, the skyscraper, and finally resulting in a big fire. However, many people cannot believe it is real, because at that time, on that day, it is a Lantern Day, a Lantern Festival. All the people is fireworking, lighting fireworks. So all the people think, okay, this is another big fireworks lit by CCTV, because previously in August we have seen all the fireworks lit by Cai Guoqiang in Olympic bird nest. So it is very successful. Nothing got burned. But this one, maybe it did not get burned. It's another kind of performance. So a lot of people just surrounded around the building to enjoy the spectacle until they found, okay, this is a real fire. So finally, we found it is very hard to believe the real and the surreal, the real and real, realistic, and the real fictional in this circumstance. So I can remember when I watched the on live show about 9/11. At that time, many people think that is a Hollywood movie. That's not another case.
I think maybe that's actually a really good place to stop and kind of talking about reality and unreality, and move into getting a few questions before it gets too late and we start losing people to hunger pains and other things. And I want to start, even though I get to ask you questions all the time, so it's really unfair of me to take the first one here. I'm going to, while everyone else is kind of thinking of their things. You know, a lot of the things that hold together what you showed us and what hold together the exhibition are these informal objects, people kind of making do with what they have available to them in the world, kind of taking the objects or the buildings or the cities that have kind of been created for them, or kind of, you know, almost imposed upon them in many cases, and reworking them and using their own ingenuity, or in your term, intelligence, to recreate them and make them fit the lives they want to have or they need to have to make them fit their actual needs. And I'm wondering, these are all physical manifestations, either objects, products, or physical spaces. How kind of moving ahead, can this notion of informalism work in a world that's more informed by a digital kind of consciousness, by a life that's shaped even more by how data is kind of stored and circulated and exchanged?
What do you mean informal sense?
Informal kind of in kind of how can will there be a difference in how people remake their own lives in China when much of their lives is perhaps lived as much online or in a good portion online as it is out in the streets? Do you think there's any correlation between the two, or are they?
Yeah, I think there are correlations. Yeah, because we can, although the informal inventions is something we think is taking place in the physical life, but we can also find many cases to show the informal inventions in virtual realities. There are good inventions in virtual communities in which people are reforming their physical life in a certain kind of virtual communities. And we can find many cases like this, and we are doing that kind of research. Yeah.
And just, I have more, but I'm going to leave it there and just open it up. I know we have people circulating with a couple of handheld mics somewhere on each side, so if anyone has a question, I think we're probably going to have time for the first 2 or 3. So please, I see a young gentleman over here with a microphone, and a young lady on this side. So please grab them and ask away.
Hi. One of the threads that I see in your presentation is the role of the migrant worker. And it seems to me that although migrant workers are clearly important in all modernizing countries, China seems to have more control over the physical movement of its workers than most countries. So I'm just wondering what you think in terms how that affects the way that Chinese cities are developing.
Yeah, Chinese government has many strategies to control the flow of the migrant workers, including the land policies, because land in China is not private, it's still public. So the circumstance in the less developed country like Mongolia or India doesn't happen in China, because the peasant still has the land and he doesn't have the freedom to exchange the land. So that he always has land. When he fear it is very dangerous or risky in the urban life, he can come back to the land to get the lowest social security. Another system is the household register system, in which a peasant still peasant, so he cannot share the urban standard, urban social security standard. So finally, there's still a gate between a borderline between the city and the countryside. And many people become very skeptical on this system, because this is actually a discrimination system. However, it still works to prevent too many people just rush to the city all of a sudden and create a big amount of slum in the city. So I think that two policy basically defines the control on the migration flows. Yeah.
Well, first I want to thank you for bringing your work here to share with us. I feel like I've learned a lot about China just from this little bit. It sort of reminds me of like a Chinese version of Let Us Now Praise Famous Men by James Agee or something, where we're seeing a whole big sweep of your culture from the perspective of kind of social consciousness, which raises my question, which is, have you ever been censored in any way by the government, or what's the government's response to the fact that you're, generating all of this information which can be consumed, by people? Is there any control exercised, or have you ever, had any kind of, intervention by the government?
Yeah. Basically, we are working in two disciplines that has to be controlled by government. One is urban planning, because urban planning, especially the planning on the land, is totally controlled by government. It's just a national strategy. Another is media. And all media, all published number in China theoretically is totally owned by the central government. So we are just using it. We are not owning it. And we have to send all our publications to the censorship bureau before it got publicated. But I think it's not a bad thing, because many cases, especially the city like in Hong Kong, if you go to Hong Kong, it is totally free. You can say anything, the speech is free, but you find very, very few good publications in Hong Kong because it's just too free and their mind becomes very direct and simplified. And censorship
Do you think the same is true here?
I don't know. But I mean, well, what we find in China is the very flexible censorship. It is not that you cannot talk about it. You can talk about it in a very smart way, in detailed way. So there is no censorship. It's just very kind of a sensibility. And when you talk about it in a very detailed way, you become very smart, and you have to become very rational. Very overall, you have to have the thorough and overall knowledge on what you are going to talk about. Yeah.
I mean, but have you ever had any cases where you had to change anything in the magazine, that the censorship bureau asked you not to do something, or has that yet?
Yeah, I think there's going to be change, but I think the censorship is actually a transitional policy, simply because Chinese people are too easy to be mobilized. Too easy to be irritated. How to say irritated?
Irritated.
Yeah, irritated. Yeah.
We're going to do two more real quick ones.
Hi, thank you very much. What do you think about unbalanced development among Chinese cities? Generally speaking, the urbanization process in China is very rapid. During the past 20 years, we have gone through what Los Angeles or what the other European cities have gone through within 100 years. But when you look at different Chinese cities, you sort of can divide it into three categories. The first tier, which is Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, the mega cities, or the immigrant workers will go there, and it becomes bigger and bigger. And then the second tier is some inland city, what you mentioned, the hinterland, that developing towards the first tier, but not as big, not as huge, but has big potentials. And then the third is those small, informal village kind of city in the western part of China, and you see the huge disparities among these cities. And what do you think is the future will be? What these disparities will bring to China?
Actually, what you talk about is already the past, because in Deng Xiaoping's time, Deng Xiaoping announced that let's have some people be richer first. But that is the first 20 or 25 years. But ever after 2003, when Hu Jintao came up into power, actually we can witness a balancing development to lower down this disparity. And I think the philosophy of Deng Xiaoping's development in Chinese cities is that you want to develop some cities with the strategy of a centralization. China has a centralized system, a centralized government. It has a big administrative power to execute all kinds of ambitions, even in Mao's time, and now in Deng's time. So SEZ is one case to concentrate their resources, all the sources and the powers and money into one specific place. And then when this model become more developed, they have moved the SEZ to Shanghai and to Beijing, now it's in Tianjin. And in Shanghai, especially in Pudong, the central government has concentrated over 200 billion RMB into a single site, because there is a tax system in China. 70% of the tax actually go to the central government. So central government become very, very powerful. So it has the ability to concentrate every site you want to develop. So with this ability, it has to determine make up the decision where to develop as a so-called dragon head of the future national strategy, national geography, economic geography. So by far, we have several centers in China. As you just said, there is South China, East China, and North China. Now the national strategy goes to North China, to Tianjin. Again, 100 billion of money invested in Tianjin. And another center is now located in the hinterland called Chengdu and Chongqing, which is called Chengyu integrated experimental zone, something like that. And we can find there is a different ambition, different destination in different SEZ now. That is actually a further development of the idea of SEZ. For example, Chengyu its ambition is to develop the countryside. It's integrate rural and urban together. And finally, the household register system will be disappeared, firstly in Chengdu and Chongqing. And also, you can find another center in mid-China, which is called Wuchang. Wuchang 综合配套改革试验区. I don't know how to translate. It's a very long name. And the ambition for this area is to develop the environmental-oriented and resource-saving community. So this experience will be promoted to other regions of China also. So we can find different strategies in different zones, which is actually slowing down or narrowing the disparity between the different cities. And you can see more and more developers actually now is now going to the hinterland simply because all the land policies is now tilting into the hinterland.
I think, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have, although I know that there are a bunch of other questions. Hopefully you guys can exchange email addresses and kind of continue the dialogue going forward in that way. Jun, it's always a privilege for me to get to hear you speak and to get to question you and to try and get just a little bit of the insight on the world that you have, because I think a lot of the ways that you analyze the world, although specific to cities in China, I think are a really great way of globally looking at how we function living in urban space together. And just thanks so much, as always, for working with me and for being here. And thank you all as well.